everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Protecting Your Organization, The Secret to Cybersecurity. My name is Kelly Blount, and I'm the Program Marketing Specialist here at General Electric Credit Union. We're so glad you've joined us as we have a lot of great content ahead. Thanks to technology, we're excited to be able to connect with you on such a great topic and wanted to thank you all for tuning in from the comfort of your home, work, or wherever you may be today. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dana Bond to introduce herself and today's guest speakers.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Kelly. As mentioned, my name is Dana Bond, and I'm the manager for the Business Services Support Team here at General Electric Credit Union. Our team handles the inquiries and requests that come to us from both our existing business members, our future business members, our website, as well as our internal teams that are assisting our business members in our branches. Our business team is ready to assist you with your business needs and answer any questions that you may have regarding all the wonderful services that we offer and support. Now I would like to introduce to you our co-presenters today, Austin Vaive and Steve Eroskey. Austin Vaive is the Information Security Manager at General Electric Credit Union for over 3 years, working to protect our credit union from cyber threats. Austin's team focuses on improving the human firewall through ongoing training and internal phishing testing, as well as ensuring that GECU's network and security defenses are up to the task of stopping attacks in an ever-changing threat landscape. Prior to joining GECU, Austin worked as part of the Information Security Department at the University of Cincinnati as an information security analyst. In this role, Austin helped to ensure the security of student data and computing systems at the university. Steve Eroskey has been in the IT business development and marketing industry for over 30 years. In 2016, Steve left the corporate world to follow his passion of helping small businesses by starting CMIT Solutions of Cincinnati Northeast. CMIT was founded to help small businesses eliminate their IT frustrations and concerns and allow them to focus on their core business. Being a small business himself, Steve feels so much pride in helping other small businesses achieve their IT goals. So without further delay, here is Austin Vaive and Steve Eroskey. Guys, over to you.
Thank you, Dana, for that introduction, and thank you to the GE Credit Union for allowing me to speak today. It's always a pleasure to get in front of people for me, because again, I'm passionate about this and talk about cybersecurity and what the small businesses can do to protect themselves, their businesses. So we're going to talk about the secrets of cybersecurity today. And we'll just jump right in with secret number one. Cybersecurity is not an IT problem. What is it? What do we mean by that? 80% of IT disasters are caused by human error. I've heard that number as high as 95%. It's that email that you get that somebody clicks on, the website that somebody goes to, where you're going to run into issues. So how do we prevent our users from clicking on a phishing email or clicking on going to a website they shouldn't be going to? We start this by creating a cybersecurity environment, a culture that everybody has to kind of live and work in. We create policies for workflows and behaviors. Those policies will lead to procedures. Where do we store files? How do we deal with sensitive information such as social security numbers, birthdays, driver's license numbers? All those things are of value in the wrong hands. And then what technology do we need to enforce those procedures or allow those procedures to happen and enforce the policies? And then finally, the people. The people are, people make mistakes, as we say right there. You can't keep them from not making mistakes because it will happen. They will click on something eventually. So you have to be prepared for that to happen if it does happen, but it's easier to train them not to make those mistakes. So what does your cybersecurity program look like? What it should look like? You want to, as I mentioned, develop a culture of security. Uh, question everything. Don't act in haste. And that results in strengthening your human firewall. The people are, again, your biggest asset in blocking the threats, in keeping those threats from becoming incidents. And that's done with security awareness training. You want to invest in a multi-layered security solution, not just having Malwarebytes or Webroot or Sophos on your PCs, but there are so many levels that you can employ, which starts with the training, having that virus protection, that spam protection, even a more sophisticated security operations center led software and response team available, which is even affordable for smaller businesses. And then do a security risk assessment. I'm surprised at how many companies that I visit don't even know where their sensitive data is located, or where it could be located. I had a customer, the first thing I ask is, do you have sensitive data on your desktops? And the owner of the company said no. And immediately somebody sitting right next to us as we were walking around said, oh, I have that stuff on my desktop. So it is there. They do that. So it's really kind of understanding your environment. Austin, I know you guys, are doing the testing, the phishing testing, and but you're also doing training, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Steve mentioned here, I mean, the human firewall aspect is huge. Having that multi-layered security is very important. Having all of these tools in place to help prevent and respond to these cyber incidents. But no tool is 100% effective on its own. So we have a very good email filter at GECU that stops, I'd say, probably 95% of the incoming, suspicious phishing emails. But that's still 5% that gets through. And with an organization that's, growing like ours is, that's a sizable number of emails each day that end up in our team members' inboxes. So they need to be trained on identifying those messages and taking the proper actions when they receive them. So as part of that training, we actually employ an internal phishing test on a monthly basis, where we have a tool that we use in my team to send basically an imitation phishing attempt to our team members that actually logs what actions they take on that. So they can be pretty convincing, but they'll get an email that says something like, your vacation request was denied. Click here to, see why, or whatever it might be. And it's actually not from HR, it's from us. And we're trying to see how susceptible they might be to clicking on that, so we can adjust our training schedules to hopefully reduce that percentage. So that's a good option. Those can be pretty inexpensive, those training solutions. And you might be surprised how many people in your own organizations just go ahead and click on whatever comes into their inbox. So that's something I would certainly recommend, at least just to see, kind of check your people and make sure that they're following the proper steps there. And the training aspect of that is huge as well. We perform quarterly training to all of our team members on information security issues, and it just helps to keep it top of mind, so that when these things do happen, they know what to do, and hopefully we can avoid people clicking on these emails and falling for these scams in the future.
Great. Yeah, that's you guys are definitely on the right path. The wheel there, the identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. That's kind of the whole cybersecurity framework. And what we're talking about here is identifying and protecting. At this point, the next thing would be, how do you detect when something goes wrong? How do you respond, and how do you recover from those? Secret number 2, you are only secure as your weakest link. And again, we've talked about this with the human firewall. And 45% of employees report that they don't get training. They don't have that luxury, or maybe, you know, it's not a strong training. You know, they get a message from HR or the owner and says, hey, go watch this, you know, 30-minute video on how to recognize a phishing email, and that's maybe all they get. And certainly it needs to be more comprehensive, and it needs to be more frequent than, you know, once a year, because you need to keep it in front, and you do that by you know, doing quarterly training, quarterly testing, hitting those fake email, you know, the phishing, uh, the phishing that you can do to see who's clicking on those, and that's invaluable, so, to see who needs more training. And I guarantee you, even if you have 100 people that don't click on it, there will be somebody that eventually will click on that link for some reason, whether they're in a hurry or it just sounds very convincing. The human firewall is, you know, as we mentioned, improving the security behaviors using the simulated phishing attacks, and then there is some training, some technology that can help, some more advanced techniques where, you know, what we're finding now is that the ransomware attacks or these phishing attacks, they have footprints in your computers. They can be in your computers for months, learning your behaviors, learning your people, learning, you know, who the boss is, learning who's in HR, learning who's in finance, and all the time as they're learning this, they're developing a scheme, and those all leave traces in the network on computers, and there may be, you know, multiple computers that you know, are involved, and the better programs, the more advanced programs, can put those disparate activities together to identify a larger problem. So what is phishing? We've talked about that. Most people know what that is. Phishing is tricking people to give out sensitive data or do so, you know, go to a website. Probably the most common one we see is, you know, we need you to look at this document, look at it. Here's your pay raise for the year. Here's everybody's pay raise for the year. Somebody's going to click on that, and basically it says, oh, you need to enter your office password, user ID and password to view the document. Well, if it's a fake site, you know, that you enter your user ID and password, and it says, oh, that wasn't right, try again. So you'll try again 3 times. So they make sure that you typed it right and they have your information correct. And they're going to use that now to log in to your mail and send more email on your behalf because you're a valid user, or they could use that user ID and password in other systems by seeing. Now that they know who you are, they're going to get on your Facebook, see maybe who's your bank, who are the sites you like, and go try and log into those places with the same information that you just entered. Spearfishing.
Yeah,
that's
Steve, if I could just
absolutely.
pop in there. I mean, that's a huge thing that we see, and that's one of the main reasons we stress not using the same password for multiple sites. If you fall for one phishing message for, say, you know, your office account, you know, that's a big deal. But if you fall for a phishing message for an account and you use that same password for all your other accounts, well, now they're all compromised, because these hackers and scammers out there, they know well enough to check all of these other sites and see if that password might work. So that's just a great example right there of why we always say to use a different password.
Correct. And yeah, so that's and change them, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, about changing them frequently. So again, spearfishing, targeting specific people in your organization. Again, they can find out who your human resources director is. They can find out who your finance director is, or CFO, and they have a whole list of people that they want to target, and it's not hard to figure out your email scheme, you know, first name dot last name, first initial last name, whatever it is, and they can kind of figure out everybody's email, and so now they can start targeting these people directly. And then there's even, whale phishing above that, which is, going after those big guys, the CEO, the CFO, and trying to get their information or get them to move on something. And then spoofing is, we all get these emails that look like they came from somebody but when you really look at the email address that shows up in the address line or in the from line, it's from somewhere, even maybe some other country. So it's easy to change the name on your email account and say, my name's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, and it goes out like that. And if nobody really looks to see that it's Eroskey at CMIT then they could think that's who they're responding to or getting email from. And there's even people now that are going a little further, and they can actually set up mail servers to spoof your mail server. So it actually looks like it came from somebody at GE Credit Union or CMIT Solutions. Now those don't last very long; they get shut down fairly quickly, but they can live long enough to send a lot of emails because they send them out pretty quick. And as we talked, here are some of the email subject line. Again, they're going to be, just a request. And I've seen people react to, go buy me some gift cards for some awards tonight. Keep it quiet because we don't want the people getting awards to know. And they've actually gone and bought the gift cards. And to all the things that you see here. I know that my dad fell for one that was the your purchase right there. They sent him an email and said he had purchased 2 iPhones, and if it wasn't correct, he needed to call the fraud department, which he did. And that's a much longer story. Didn't have good results. We were able to get it before a lot of bad things happen, but it does happen, and I'm sure everybody's got stories like that. So those are the kind of the flags that you look for, and always the urgency as well. It's like, we need this done today. This has to happen. I need this right away. Can you make that happen? So I don't know, Austin. Are you seeing are you seeing any high volume of certain subjects?
Yeah, so to hit on your previous point, we get a lot of emails that are supposedly coming from Tim Ballinger, our CEO, and it's obviously not actually from him, but they'll use his name in a lot of emails to our team members, trying to, like you said, get them to buy gift cards, get them to give them a call at his personal cell number, and it's obviously not his cell number, but all of these things, people think, oh my gosh, I just got an email from the CEO. That's very important. I better do that right away. And they know that, so they're using that name to try to get you to kind of read through it very quickly and take whatever action they're asking for. And that's the main reason you see the urgency here, is because if you look too closely at them, or you look at the email too long, you start to notice the red flags that might tip you off that it's a phishing attempt. So that's part of the reason that they try to get that urgency across, is so that you don't actually take your time reading it and you click on it without really paying attention and thinking. So it's always a good idea to slow down, read an email twice, verify that the sender's address, verify the link goes where it's supposed to, and that goes a long way towards catching these things. But yeah, absolutely, we're seeing the same type of subject lines and the same type of spoofing coming through to our organization as well.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing, and everybody wants to please the boss, right? Especially a new guy in a smaller company. He wants to make that boss happy, and he'll gladly run down to Target and get some gift cards. Dirty little secret number 3: the internet is bigger than you think. So more than half of all internet traffic is fake. And by fake, we mean it's not a human sending you an email. It's robots, bots, it's spam, it's stuff that you really don't need. And as Austin mentioned earlier, GE's got a spam filter. You know, and we have one for our company mail as well, and I can't tell you how many emails get blocked or quarantined just because of the content that gets recognized. Some of it's the address that gets recognized. You know, it's with those, it's always a challenge when you know, we do a little bit of business with Japan. One of my customers here is Japanese owned. Their headquarters is in Japan, and a lot of times their mail will get blocked just because it's in it comes over in Japanese, and that's kind of a red flag. So we have to, I'll say, constantly keep allowing different emails to pass. But that's a you know, it's what you want to do. You want to make sure you go through those extra steps, rather than just allow everything and you know, hope that something doesn't get allowed through that's really bad traffic. So this is kind of the iceberg of the web, and I'm sure you've all heard about the dark web. You know, most of us just live on that portion above the waterline there. But there's also, you know, the deep web. And those are things places you can go, but they're not going to be found in a search engine. So you have to know about them, and they're okay to go to. You probably want to spend more time above water than below water, but you know, they're out there. And then the dark web is a very small part at the in the internet, and you can't get there. You cannot get there with your Google browser, with your Firefox browser, with your, you know, Edge browser. You need a special browser to get there, and it's generally not a place you want to go unless you're pretty savvy about what you're looking for and what you're doing there. And most of it's not good. If most of it, if not all, is not good stuff. What is in the dark web? You know, a lot of it is people selling that information that they get from you. You know, so if somebody, you hear all the time that somebody got their servers hacked. You know, whether it's a you know, Anthem Blue Shield or one of the dozens of others that we read about every week are getting hacked. And what these people are grabbing, they're grabbing Social Security number, we call it PII, so personal identifiable information. And again, it's Social Security numbers, addresses, zip codes, birthdays, driver's license numbers. You know, a lot of that stuff they can get on the internet anyways. If you look up anybody, you can find their voter record, and you know, it'll usually give you their birth date, their address, but it won't give you their Social Security number. It won't give you their you know, their insurance card numbers. And that's the stuff that goes for a high price on the dark web. And this is just a little statistic on you know, what's being taken. You know, deceased Americans is a good example, that people are able to find information on people that have passed away, and they can, you know, do some mining. They can get their Social Security number, and you know, become that person. And like it says here, it takes 6 months for the death to get registered somewhere, and in that process, you know, somebody's racking up charges, and of course, you know, they're not monitoring their credit because they're not around anymore. So this is you know, a place where you know, somebody could be grabbing this information and reselling it on the dark web.
Steve, if I can just pop in here for a second. You know, speaking of the dark web, it's not just that PII. We're seeing a lot of compromised account passwords being sold as well. So if someone does run a very successful phishing campaign and they collect, you know, thousands of these, you know, usernames and passwords to a system, that might be all they were looking to do, and they might want to be pawning that information off to another buyer to then, you know, proceed to do more hacking with it. So again, we'll talk about this when we talk more about passwords, but that's one of the major reasons why we recommend changing your password frequently, where if you do type your your password into a phishing message and it gets compromised, it might go into one of these databases on the dark web where people can buy 1,000 usernames and passwords to Facebook, for example. Now it might be a little while before the person actually goes and uses it to log in, and if you have changed your password, frequently, you have a good chance of stopping that. So that's just another example of stuff being bought and sold on the dark web that might impact you.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. And one of the services that we can provide, other IT service companies can provide, and there's even places to go get it for free. Is just putting your name into a dark web scanner, the domain name, and it'll come back and tell you what records are out on the dark web with your domain. We've done it for some of our bigger customers, and you'll see, things going back to 2012, 2015, 2004, where, it's got you can see the person's name, you can see their user ID, and it may or may not have their password. Some of them will say we don't have their password. But if you were to find their password somewhere else, and try it, and they haven't changed their password for 10 years, 12 years, you may be able to get into their account on whatever system that's showing. And most of these are, like I said earlier, when somebody breaks into a website or a server and gets all the logins, gets all the data from those sites. So then, just as an example, how bad is the cybercrime situation compared to what it used to be? 94, one virus per day. You can read those. Right now, we're looking at 4 new viruses every second, which is about 360,000 new viruses every day. Now, granted, a lot of those are variations of existing ones, but they're still new. They still have to be cataloged, and your software needs to be constantly up to date to identify the bit tracks or the bit signature of each of those viruses, and so that's why it's important to have a virus that updates itself, not just daily, but almost as needed, hourly, for those day one viruses. Secret number 4, prevention is 10% of the cost of remediation. So, I mean, we've heard this, through, stitch in time saves 9, penny saved is a penny earned. It's all about do the small stuff that you can now, and it will save you a lot in the future. So the average cost for a compromised record is $170 per record. So if you have thousands of records, you can see how quickly that would rack up to build up something that you have to recover from. And that 175 is a lot of things. We'll talk a little bit about those on the next slide. But training cost is about $6 per employee per month, which is probably, if you do the math, a lot less than 175 times the number of records that you have. So the training just makes sense in so many ways to make sure that they don't incur cost on your company. So one of the first things is, we talked earlier about doing a security risk assessment. And the main thing in a security assessment is figuring out, where do I have data, and where is that sensitive information, that personal information that we have, where is it kept? How is it accessed, and who has access to it is also important. And can we limit access to that? And bear in mind, it's not, and as we said earlier, it's not necessarily an IT problem. I've walked into financial offices and you know, people that are doing health insurance, medical offices, and you know, you look around at the piles of customer folders that are available. You know, so you have a cleaning crew coming in, or if somebody were to come in at night, there's physical information lying around that is probably not a good thing. And that's the same even with passwords. You know, if I'm at a customer's site and a customer's having an issue and I need their password, they're not there to ask. First thing I do is turn over the keyboard. How many of you have your password on a sticky note on the bottom of your keyboard, or the picture next to your desk? You know, we look there. Usually we can. I'll say, you know, not every time, but there's, you know, I'll say a little less than 50-50 we can find that. And what if so this is where we talk about the 175 per record. This is when the worst happens, when somebody has encrypted your file server, and all of your data, your customers' data, your information that you need to run your business is now no longer available. How will you recover that? And so, you know, there's a price you can pay to back up your data off-site, off of that machine, so that it could be recovered. There's also cybersecurity insurance. So you can actually buy insurance to protect yourself from a ransomware attack. So if you do get hit by ransomware, you may be okay for recovering your data, but what do you do? I mean, it's probably going to it may take a day or two, depending on what your tolerance was for getting your data back. But if you have 12 employees, 7 employees, you probably still have to pay them while you're trying to recover that data. Cybersecurity insurance can help with that. You may have to have some type of an investigation depending on your line of business. Cybersecurity can pay for that kind of post-mortem investigation on how did this happen, what do we need to do, and then you know and pay for employees that still have to come to work. And then, do you have an incident response plan? What happens when if you were to get hit by ransomware and you have customers? I have a customer that's a tax, they're a CPA, and they're doing a lot of people's tax returns. They were at a conference and the guy decides to log in through the hotel Wi-Fi to their secure server. Well, not secure if you're going over the hotel Wi-Fi, and they were able to snag his user ID and password. And then they in turn filed, after changing the names and addresses on the tax returns, they were able to file about 10 returns with very big refunds going back to a different address. So you always, and who do you call when you find out that happens? Do you know who you have to call? If you're a small business, maybe you don't have to call anybody. If you're a part of a larger organization, you may have to call headquarters. You may have to, if you're a FINRA or HIPAA compliant type of a company, you may have to call, excuse me, you may have to call a, some organization to report that you've been hacked, to report that you've been ransomwared. So you have to have that all laid out. Who makes the call and who do they call? But I did want to ask Austin. I said, I mean, I'm sure you guys have an incident response plan. I mean, who's got to make that call in your organization, right?
Yeah, we do. And I mean, it's no fun to maintain those documents and write those documents, those policies and procedures, but it really is important to have that groundwork laid, because when something like this pops off and happens, it's go, go, go. You want to have a step-by-step guide that assigns responsibilities, and you know exactly what needs to happen to help you recover. I mean, you don't want to be figuring it out as you go along when something like that, something big happens.
Exactly. And again, that's the time for speed, not when you're reading the email, but when something bad happens, you need to react quickly. So, all right, secret number 5. This is all about the passwords we talked about. So the new guideline for passwords, we're calling them memorized secrets. So, kind of the joking thing here, passwords are like underwear. You need to change them regularly. Don't leave them on your desk, and you don't loan them to anyone. So it's kind of yours to manage and yours to protect. Next slide. So use memorized secrets. Maybe some words of a poem, kind of changing some words to letters, or putting @ signs in for A's, or later. Personally, I like colors and animals. So blue rabbit and some numbers, and things like that. Scripture references, or things that just phrases that you like. That's great way to go. Things that you can remember, and maybe a lot of them, and somehow maybe tie it into the site that you're going to. Austin, what do you have a kind of a minimum standard? I know everybody hates it. You got to do 27 characters with 3 capitals, and
Yep.
and special characters and numbers, and what do you guys do?
Yeah, so we do have a minimum standard. I think we do something along the lines of 8 or 10 characters, special character, uppercase, lowercase, number, and then we actually maintain a list of blocked passwords that we don't let people use. Basically an issue with the password is these hackers and bad guys, they'll take that list of hacked passwords off the dark web, and there's programs out there that can basically run through each of those passwords on a given account. We're talking hundreds of thousands of compromised passwords in the past, and they can use those passwords to try to break into a new system, assuming that at least a handful of people have probably used a password that's in that list previously. So one of the main recommendations now is moving towards a password management solution. So they've got a company called LastPass. There's one, Dashlane. Even your web browsers now are starting to have these built in, where Google will generate a password for you in Chrome and remember it for you. And what that allows is, it allows you to have basically a very long, completely randomly generated password on a given account that you don't even have to remember anymore. That's the big kicker. Is we give all these recommendations for hey, make sure your password's this long, make sure it's random, use a different one for every site, and make sure you change it frequently. And unless you're a human computer, it can be really difficult to actually remember all those passwords for each site. So what happens? People get lazy. Human nature. They start writing their passwords down. They start storing them in Word documents. All these bad habits start creeping through because you're trying to be good and set these unique passwords, but it's impossible to remember. So those password management applications and services, they do offer a valuable service. They have business options as well if you want to hook everyone up in your company with that. But basically, what that does is you set one really strong master password that and then you log into your account, and you can have access to all your other passwords that are randomly generated and strong. So that's something that we're starting to see more of. NIST is actually recommending that. They're kind of the government kind of guideline for a lot of the cybersecurity stuff. They're starting to recommend those password managers as well. So that's also an option if you're finding that you use a lot of different systems and you can't quite handle keeping up with remembering the passwords for them.
Right, and we haven't even really talked about the 2-factor authentication.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing as well. Yeah.
That is, if you do anything to protect your data, it is putting the 2-factor authenticated. Users hate it because then it's not fun every time you go to a website. First thing in the day, you got to pull out your phone. I fire up 4 or 5 portals do we use to manage our customers, and every one of them I have to enter a different two-factor authentication number for each one. And although it's a pain in the butt, I know that keeps other people from being able to log in. And if another way, even if it's just a text or an email with some other sites, as long as that person has that device in hand and that password in their memory, or even if the password got hacked, then they still have the phone as a second hurdle for the bad guys to get over. So
yeah, Steve, I would say that is the single biggest thing you can do to secure a system, is enable two-factor authentication and use it. If you take nothing else away from this, I would give that recommendation at the very least for your email and your Microsoft services, is turn on that Microsoft Authenticator option, have it shoot you a text. You can get an app on your phone, whatever works for your organization. Heavily recommend two-factor authentication. It will go a long ways towards mitigating a lot of these cyber threats.
Exactly. Okay, next slide, recommendations. What does the FBI recommend? Well, obviously we've talked a lot about awareness training for employee and robust technical prevention controls. And again, that is, password management. It is the two-factor authentication. It is, advanced network level security programs, if you feel you need those. But yeah, it's prevention is the first thing you want to focus on. And then the second thing they recommend is a solid business continuity plan, so that if you are attacked by ransomware, you are able to recover. In our 6 years, we've been in business 6 years, we've had one ransomware attack. It happened at 10 p.m. at night. It was one of our customers that work around the clock. And, we were able to stop it before it infected every computer. There were about 15 computers on site, and it got to 2 of them. And we were on site within an hour, and were able to have them, they were able to work from a different computer that night, but we had that computer and the other computer both back up and running for first thing in the morning. So because they had a good continuity plan, we had everything backed up. We didn't have to deal with a ransomware attacker, send them any money or do anything. We just completely wiped out the computer and rebuilt it. And again, because we had the continuity plan in place, that was fairly easy to do. And what you don't want to do, again, we talked, it's not an IT issue. Hackers focus on the humans in the company, and they don't. There are people that know the technical vulnerabilities, the backdoor passwords and things like that. It's much easier to fool a human than it is to try and crack into the back end of a system. By fooling the human, you will be able to get into the back end, but it's one's harder than the other. The other one is dismiss it as a large organization problem. We didn't talk about this earlier, but 60% of all attacks, and this is some old data, but in 2014, it's SMBs. And I've always heard it's around 50% of it. It's just as prevalent for small businesses as it is for the large corporations. Our data is just as valuable as anybody else's. Then there is no silver bullet. There's no one program. There's no one thing that you can do that's going to solve the problem or protect you. It is a multi-level security program that is going to keep you safe. And then relying on static solutions. If you've been using the same solution for 5 years, you're protecting the virus from that would have hit you 5 years ago. It needs to be a more of a dynamic plan that's going to adjust to what the bad guys are doing these days. And it's always different. We hear of new things that are coming. Some of them are, may or may not come to pass, but there are a lot of them that you have to plan for and be ready for. I heard a great one about the, plugging your USB, a USB be into one of the chargers at an airport, that it can steal your data by plugging into the US. Theoretically, yeah, it can be done, but I followed up on that, and I have never heard of that actually happening to anyone at any airport or anywhere, other than the testing that they were doing. But again, there are a lot of things you need to prepare for. And today, steps for today: initiate your cybersecurity training program if you don't have one. Find out where your data is. There's spreadsheets available that will walk you through where to look, where to start looking, who to ask. And obviously your IT provider could help with that. We can help with that. And then what's your strategy for recovery if you were to get hit with ransomware? And that's true even if you were to lose your data due to a technical failure, as it is with a ransomware attack. It's what's your strategy to recover? How long are you willing to be down before it starts to hurt your company, before the cash register is really going to stop ringing versus just slowing down? So those are the things that you can do today. So just a little RX, a little saying: dance like nobody is watching, and encrypt your data like everybody is watching. I think that's kind of where we're at. A quick thing about CMIT: we do the layers of security, multi-layered security, and managed services. We can do the training, the monitoring, the anti-malware, anti-spam, DNS filtering, which keeps your people from going to bad sites. We can help with password security, password managers, and firewall management to keep everybody safe. That's one of the things that we specialize in. And that's it. That's all. We're ready for questions. Austin, anything you want to add before we go into questions?
No, you really hit it on the head. And again, I mean, when you're talking about the human firewall and everything, I mean, it's just important to remember a lot of these hackers and bad guys out there, they're in it for a paycheck. They're not most of the time doing this for fun or to spite you. They're trying to get money out of it, and just like any business, they're trying to get a return on their investment. It's real easy to send a phishing email, and it's comparatively much harder to craft a virus specifically to target your organization. So they're going to go for the low-hanging fruit, and that's what you're going to see most often are those kind of relatively low effort phishing emails, spam calls. And that's really what we got to prepare for is, training the employee and making sure that they know how to identify them and how to respond to them.
All right, awesome. Thank you both, Steve and Austin, for taking us through today's presentation. For anybody on today's webinar, we are going to open it up for the Q&A session. I know there were a couple questions in the chat and a couple pre-submitted, so we'll go ahead and jump in. The first question is, do you have a recommendation for password creators?
Password creators. Most of the programs, and Austin, you can jump in, but most of the programs, like we mentioned, LastPass, or some of these others, they'll create it. Google Chrome can create them for you. There's most of I'll say the good password managers will also create them for you.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And generally with that, like I was saying earlier, since, with a password manager, you're no longer on the hook to actually remember that password. You can set it to be 40 characters long, 50 characters long. And since you don't have to remember it anymore, you can make it as secure as you want. You can, sky's the limit there. So yeah, definitely I recommend looking into some of those password managers like LastPass or Dashlane. There's a bunch of them popping up here and there now. Those are just some of the bigger ones. But yeah, even just using the auto-generate password option in Google Chrome is a good step.
And they integrate with your browser. So again, like when you're on a page with your user ID and password, you can kind of click on your password manager, and it'll ask if you want it to be auto-filled for you, and it'll do that, and
Yep.
you can have it do that ongoing. So it's not, like you said, it's not hard, and it does give you secure passwords.
Our next question is asking, as far as cybersecurity, do you help with the protection as far as storing credit card information for recurring payments and trying to determine the need if they need to be PCI compliant?
We can certainly help with that. We have, and we didn't mention earlier, CMIT Solutions is a franchise model. So we have 240 offices across the country. So we have a lot of processes and procedures. We have a lot of HIPAA customers and FINRA customers, and we can help with that PCI compliance if you need to run scans on your network or answer questionnaires for your credit card provider or your merchant account. Then we can certainly help with that.
Our next question is, do I need to only worry about phishing attacks through email, or what can others look like?
Well, you also will see them, and we see them frequently in browser pop-ups.
Yep.
That is probably one of the most common, and I go back to my dad. He calls me at least 3 times a year with Microsoft pop-up shows up on his browser and says, we found a serious security problem with your computer, and it won't let you close the browser. It won't let you do anything except call the 800 number or shut down your computer. Is what they tell you not to do, but that's what you need to do. So usually it's an email or a browser. It could come from a document, but that's generally tied to a phishing document. So not too often would you see that.
Yeah, I would say too, another just layered security like we've been talking about, consider installing an ad blocker extension onto your web browsers. A lot of the time the advertisements, especially if you're on maybe a questionable site or one that isn't as reputable, a lot of the advertisements on those sites contain those pop-ups. So installing an ad blocker is a good preventative measure to maybe hide some of those pop-ups and make it so you're not even presented with the opportunity to click on them.
Great point.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
This next question says, in a financial transaction, for example, the creation of new investment accounts, IRAs, annuities, etc., the PII were entered into a paper form. Is it secure to do so, and how can we protect that?
I'm not sure I understand that question, but so when you're on a website, and one of the things you should always check if you're going to be giving information, even your password, there should be an HTTPS in front of the website, so you know that your transmissions are secure. If it's just an HTTP, then if somebody's able to look at what's going through that web connection, if you, God forbid, you should never do this from the Starbucks or wherever the hotel network, but as you're taking it from that paper form and typing it into a website, that transmission is secure. The HTTPS is an encrypted transmission, so nobody can figure out what you're typing if they were to be watching your traffic move through the internet. And hopefully I hit that, but and then the paper record obviously has to be physically secured so that nobody could walk up and grab that. And then on your computer, if you were storing personal information, say you scanned that data and you're storing that scanned piece of paper of a transaction or an application, or even your application for employment or anything like that. Again, social security numbers, birthdays can all be tied together. If you're keeping that on a computer, you should, the drive has to absolutely be encrypted. Or if it's on a file server, the drives for the file server has to be encrypted. What you want to make sure is that if somebody were to, you dispose of that at some point, or if somebody were to pick that up and walk out with it, that they couldn't take that hard drive, even though they don't have your password to log in, they can still take that hard drive and plug it into a computer and look at all the files on that computer. And of course, if it's encrypted, they're not going to be able to look at anything on that. They can't even see the file names, let alone what's in the files if it's encrypted.
And then we'll go ahead and end on this last question. I know we're coming up on our time. It says, is it secure if you fill out a paper form and give it to a banker and a credit union, for example, is that data secure?
Yeah. It's obviously with any sort of paper document, it's only as secure as, however it is in transit. So you got to be careful with leaving stuff like that out in the open, or, losing the envelope or the form, en route to the credit union. But we practice, very careful steps whenever we're dealing with paper records. We have a clean desk policy here, which is something I didn't get the chance to touch on, but generally just states that, we want to make sure that our physical workspaces are clean. We talked a lot about, the digital files, digital, security, but it's just as important to make sure that we don't leave a sensitive document on our desk when we go to lunch. As much as we hope that all of our buildings are secure and everyone there is, supposed to be there, we can't be leaving things out that someone could walk by and, take a picture of or make a copy of or anything like that. Same goes for, like we were saying, with your passwords. We don't want Post-it notes on desks. In that situation, anyone can walk by. So we regularly do clean desk audits of all of our branches and our office locations, where my team will go and we'll go to a branch before it opens, and we'll check to make sure that we're not leaving any documents out. Same thing with shredding, right? So if we're done with the document, we no longer need it. We have designated locked shred bins where we have a company come by and they shred those documents on site instead of disposing them in the dumpster or anything like that. So definitely important to keep up with your physical document security as well as your digital document securities.
And just to add to that a little bit on the technical security side, I mean, we take care of our customers. We help them with recycling their computers. When we recycle a computer, we do remove the hard drive. We physically take the hard drive apart, remove the platter, and destroy the platter. So the data is no longer with the drive. The data is no longer intact physically. From an electronic point, so nobody's going to be able to read the disk, the platter, if they were to take it and put it in some other drive somehow. That could, it's very expensive to do that, but they're, if it's a high value, disk drive that they're aware of, they would spend a lot of money to try and recover that if the drive was intact. Of course, if it's encrypted, they can't do that quickly, and then if it's destroyed, they can't do it at all. So we do that for our customers as well.
All right, well, that's going to conclude our Q&A session for today. Thanks again, Steve and Austin, for taking us through the presentation and answering all of the questions. If anybody has any further questions, Dana's contact information is up on the screen if you'd like to contact the business services team with any questions you may have in regards to your business. But with that, thank you all so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.